I just want to say right off the bat, if in the background you hear children screaming, it's literally school kids coming back from school. It's about that time, and for some reason I'm recording at 3:30 p.m. in the afternoon when kids are getting off school, and they always walk by my apartment and they're going nuts. So definitely did not plan that. This is just like the time that I have to record this thing, and there just happens to be school kids outside, like literal first graders walking home. We'll get into that in this panel. That love to go crazy every time they walk by my apartment. But anyway, hello guys. I hope you're having a really fun on-con. I'm pretty sure I'm probably in the chat talking to some of you guys. It's always really cool to get to know a lot of new people at on-con, and work alongside with, honestly, a lot of panelists that I've seen panels from at East Coast cons, and panelists that I've like really looked up to. So it's really cool that I get to do a panel at this event every single time. Anyway, my name is Kira Fox, and this panel is School Anime. What does it get right? Now, before we really jump into the panel, I'll tell you a little bit about myself so that you know who you're getting your information from. Again, you can call me Kira. I've been a resident of Japan for 4 years. I taught English at Japanese middle schools and elementary schools. My husband actually teaches English in high schools. He teaches a much higher level of English. He's got like a phonetics degree and a teaching English license and a Japanese teaching license, so he's like way up there. Me, the job that I did, a monkey could do, but he really teaches a lot more advanced English, and he's taught for 4 years in 9 different Japanese high schools. So between the two of us always talking about our experiences working inside of Japanese schools, we've really gotten to know how they work. And when we come home and watch anime, it's really interesting to see some of the same things that happen in anime that happen at our schools, and how things can be very different. And we'll definitely get into that. So you have most likely, if you're into anime, there's a good chance you've seen a school anime. Now, there might be a few people out there who are really only into the shonens, maybe, that are outside of the school genre. Maybe you grew up on, and when I say school genre, I mostly mean like realistic Japanese schools. So, you know, even though Naruto, for example, he goes to ninja school, that's not your average everyday Japanese school. So, you know, if you're someone who maybe just watches a whole lot of shonen, maybe you're like into Demon Slayer and maybe in like Full Metal Alchemist and stuff, those anime don't have aspects of Japanese school in them. But honestly, I would bet that most of you in the chat have probably watched at least one school anime, or at least one anime that had a Japanese school in it. Like, even though I don't, you know, most people would not consider Yu Yu Hakusho or Sailor Moon a school anime, there are enough parts of both of those shows that take place in a school, and I feel like maybe those shows could have been the first glimpse that a lot of Westerners saw of a Japanese school in an anime. So here I just have two of my favorite school anime examples, and I'll get into why as we go through the panel, but the first one being Sound Euphonium and the second one being Akebi's Sailor Uniform, and I'll get into why I love these two particular shows as a good representation of Japanese schools and Japanese school life. So you've got this side of school anime that's super realistic, and then you have the side that does take place in Japanese schools and has elements of Japanese schools in them, but they're just so different, so fantasy or sci-fi, just so ridiculous, but they do take elements from Japanese schools, and I feel like these are the anime that usually get more popular, so I do feel like there can sometimes be some misconceptions about Japanese school life. So with all of that said, I want to ask the chat, what was your first school anime? Even if it's something like Sailor Moon or Yu Yu Hakusho, where it's not necessarily a school anime, but you do see Usagi going to school and Yusuke going, well, he usually skips school, but you get what I mean. I think for me, my first school anime that I really specifically remember being a school anime, and possibly the first time I ever encountered Japanese school elements, was Lucky Star back when it was airing in 2007. I think that was my first taste of it. Because before that, even if I was watching stuff like Pokemon and Beyblade and Sonic X is a great example, like those are all anime, but I always felt like the schools in those anime, especially Sonic X, more reflected Western schools than Japanese schools, so they weren't really very good examples. So I think my first real taste of Japanese school anime was Lucky Star. So I'd like to know in the chat. I'll probably be talking to you guys. It'd be really interesting to see what you guys say. Also, before this panel, I went on my Facebook and I asked, through my status, I asked people that follow my Facebook what their favorite school anime is. And Ouran High School Host Club and Assassination Classroom were both number 1. So, I actually did not know that about Assassination Classroom. I actually had no idea that, people were really into Assassination Classroom. So, I guess when I asked the question, I expected more realistic answers. Like, when I think of school anime, I guess maybe because I've spent so much time in a Japanese school, I do think of a more realistic take on a Japanese school, but there are so many unrealistic takes in anime that have elements of Japanese school life in them, and for some reason I didn't even think about assassination. Like, people would think, oh, a Japanese school anime, yeah, Assassination Classroom is one, whereas in my mind it's like, what, it's so bizarre, it's so different that it doesn't click in my mind that that's a Japanese school anime, but alas. So the actual contents of this panel, we're going to be talking about the school year structure and how it differs from schools in America. Now, to be fair, I've only been to schools in America. I'm sure we might have some other people at this event that aren't Canadian or American. Like, maybe their school lives are different, whether that be in Australia or the UK or anywhere else in the world. So I can only base off of my experiences as a student in U.S. schools, specifically U.S. private schools, so didn't really go to public school for very long. So, again, a lot of the comparisons that I'm going to be making are going to be more towards my own experiences in a private school, a private U.S. school. We're also going to talk about uniforms. You guys already know, if you've seen school anime, how important the uniforms are. School lunch is so different. We're going to talk about clubs, academic pressure in Japanese society, school trips, and the teacher's life. So sit back, relax, grab you some oi ocha or some I got some oi ocha right here. I'm going to take a sip before we go. All right, I should be good to talk for the next 45 minutes or so. Okay, so first things first, let's talk about the structure of the school. The school year starts and the school year's ending. So many of you may have noticed when you watch anime, a lot of the times it starts with a student in his apartment where he lives all alone, and he wakes up and he's like, oh, I'm late for school, and he grabs some toast and he's running to school, and the cherry blossom trees have are in full bloom, and cherry blossoms are flowing everywhere. And there's some realism in that. I could talk for a while about how not as many Japanese, or a lot in general, not a lot of Japanese high school students actually live alone. Many of them do live with their parents or grandparents. That is something that happens in school anime a lot, I feel, where the main character will live alone, but actually statistically only about 6 to 7% of Japanese high school students live alone, or even in dorms. I think it's even less that live in dorms. So that is one major difference, is that it seems like every school anime we watch, the character lives alone. So that's a little bit of a rare thing, is for a Japanese student to live alone. So the school year actually starts, the reason why you always see the cherry blossoms in bloom is because the school year actually starts in spring, whereas in America it usually starts in late August, or when I was a kid it started in early September. In Japan it usually starts at the very beginning of April, which is usually when the the cherry blossoms are in full bloom, which is why you always see an anime during opening ceremonies, and the students all going to class for the first time. There's always cherry blossoms. Now, the end of the school year, graduation, takes place in March. So you've got April as your start, and almost a whole entire year until graduation. And this is because as in America, graduation is usually in May, I would say. Maybe June for a lot of high schools and middle schools. The breaks that Japanese students have are different. So, and we'll definitely get into that. So, starts early April, graduation is in mid-March, which is why you kind of see the same weather environment. Like, weather is so important. Weather and seasons are so important in anime. Like, you will be able to tell when summer break is in Japan, and like, oh, this anime started and the first frame it shows me is cherry blossoms, so this must mean we're in April. Like, really pay attention to that in anime. It's really, really cool. So breaks and vacations, we'll get into this. So the very first break that Japanese students get during the school year, after it starts in April, is actually very, very soon in the school year. And that's Golden Week, which is actually at the very end of April into the beginning of May. So the students really only have 2 or 3 weeks of school, and then they have a week off, or maybe around 7 to 10 days, depending on the weekends. So this is actually something that's very nice. You can kind of easily slide into school the first 2 or 3 weeks and get used to things, and then you get a week break. I actually really like that. But then after that week break, you have a very long rest of May and June until late July, where you'll get your summer vacation. Now, in the US, summer vacations usually start in late May and then go through all of June and July. And then nowadays, it seems like a lot of schools are starting in mid-August. When I was a kid, I think I mostly started in early September. So we had a lot of months off, I think. We like good 2.5 solid months of summer vacation. Whereas in Japan, it's really only about a month, maybe 5 weeks at most. So the very, very end, the very last few days in July, they will get off. Usually all of August, summer school aside. And then usually the very end of August, or maybe the first couple of days of September, the second semester of their school year starts. So summer vacation is like super important in anime. I feel like we see this in anime and manga where a lot of big things happen in school anime during summer break, or there's entire animes that take place, like just maybe small 12, heck, even 24 episode anime that just feature summer vacation because of how important it is for high schoolers. So other breaks and vacations. So I think the reason why Japan does have a smaller summer break in comparison to the West is because Japanese students do get quite a bit of breaks and Japanese national holidays throughout the year. So you do get winter and New Year's vacation, which is usually about two-ish weeks, maybe 2 or 3 weeks. I think maybe a month if you're in college in the West. But in Japan, New Year's is so important. It's less that you're getting off for Christmas, because Christmas isn't a actual nationally recognized holiday in Japan, and more New Year's. New Year's is a very important national holiday in Japan where you do spend time with family. You go, if you live far away from your family, you go and visit them. So this is about a week to 10 days vacation, probably the biggest vacation time in Japan. I would say even compared to Golden Week, because so many people are scrambling to go visit their families, and they go to the shrines on New Year's Eve and New Year's Day. So you have that. You have spring break. Now, spring break is the small break you get in between graduation in March and the beginning of the next school year in April. So if you start in April, you go all the way through the year, and then the seniors will graduate in May, and then you get about 2, maybe 3 weeks of time at the end of March and a little bit into April to prepare for the next school year. Whereas in the West, it's very different where, say you're in like 7th grade middle school, you get off for summer in May, and then you go through your summer, and then in September you start 8th grade. It's different. So you have like 2.5 months in the West between grade changes, where in Japan you only have about 2 weeks in between grade changes. Japanese national holidays. I implore you to look at a calendar of Japanese national holidays. There's so many for so many random reasons. I'm sure Japanese people think that we have off for a lot of random reasons, like maybe Labor Day or Memorial Day or something like that. But Japanese national holidays consist of a day for the sea, a day for children, a day for the elderly. Usually the emperor's birthday you get off as well. So a lot of these like random Japanese national holidays that get sprinkled, they're usually on Mondays actually. That allows for a long weekend. And if a Japanese national holiday lands on a Saturday or a Sunday, usually you get Monday as an observed day where school will be off and businesses will be off too. So you get quite a lot of those as well. I definitely think you should look at a Japanese calendar. You'll probably be surprised, especially in the fall, how many national Japanese holidays there are. So student classification, we'll get into this too. So you might have noticed when you watch anime that the characters will go into class 3B. 3B seems to be a very popular class for anime. I know that in Clannad, the main character, Nagisa, is like, I'm from class 3B. 3B seems very popular for whatever reason. So elementary school, you have about 6 years of that. So from your first year to your 6th year. Junior high school, which you do for 3 years, which is when you're technically 7th, 8th, and 9th grade. And then you have high school, which is also 3 years. So it would be 10th, 11th, and 12th grade. Now the difference here is that junior high school is usually like about 3 years, 6th, 7th, 8th grade in the West. But then high school is 4 years in the United States. You have 9th through 12th grade, but in Japan, high school is only 3 years because you have an extra year that hangs on elementary school. 6th grade, I know in my private school, 6th grade was considered elementary school, but in most schools in the US, I think 6th grade is classified as junior high school, so it is a little bit different. You only have 3 years of high school versus the 4 years that we have in the US, which is why I have the 6-3-3 right here, so you can kind of get an idea of how many years you spend at each level of your education. So, and then you have the classroom classifications here. So like 1A. So 1A, if you're at an elementary school, class 1A is going to be your first years, your first grade students, your little 5 and 6 year olds. Class A, and then there'll be like class 1B and 1C if there's 3 classes of first graders in the school. And then sometimes they do go by 1-1, 1-2, 1-3 instead of 1A, 1B, 1C. The elementary schools that I worked in did 1-1, 1-2, 1-3, and 1-4 because it was a pretty big elementary school. And then so on and so forth. 2B, so B class for second graders, or if 2B is high school, then that is more like an 11th grader, so about a 16-year-old would be in class 2B, and then so on and so forth. This is a good way to just like kind of classify which classroom you are in. It's a little bit different than the West because in the West you can say, well, I'm a junior. I was class of 2011, so which was senior year. So I'm a senior. Class of 2011, that's kind of how you classify yourself. But in Japan, each year you kind of classify yourself as, I'm in class 2B. I'm a second year in class B. And because Japanese students do not change classrooms, they can be classified as that. Unlike in the West, you're always leaving your classroom and going to the science room, the math room, the English room. In Japan, they usually stay at their one desk in their one classroom, and the teachers come to the classroom instead. So, fun thing. School and dress code and uniforms. The dress codes in Japan are way more strict than they are in the West, I believe. Now, you have your private schools that will require uniforms in the US, but I think that's pretty rare. So, you guys have probably all seen either the seifuku, the sailor uniforms in Japan, or you've probably seen the anime that they'll have like a vest and then a skirt. At least the girls will, the vest and the skirt. And both types of uniforms are used in Japan. Seifuku is more of an older style, so I feel like a lot of schools are more so going like the blazer and the sweater and the skirt or the pants kind of way. But every once in a while you will see the seifuku, which I really like. They're really cute. So let's talk a little bit about elementary school dress code. And you may have seen this if you've seen anime where it takes place in elementary school or has elementary school characters. They don't have uniforms. They don't wear seifuku. They don't wear the vests or anything. They can actually just wear whatever they want. Like you can see in this real picture actually in Japan of students. but this just makes, and I'll get into it when I talk about Akebi's sailor uniform, the anime I want to recommend you guys. Getting your first getting your first, well, it could be a sailor uniform. Getting your first school uniform in Japan is kind of a sign of growing up, because in elementary school you don't have one, but when you enter junior high school, you do get one. But yeah, it's just nice that elementary school students can just wear whatever they want. So one of the defining things that an elementary school student in Japan will have is the randoseru. The randoseru. So this is, if you see the red book bag on the little character from Kakushigoto, this is a randoseru. You can also see in the real photo in Japan, those like red book bags. That little kid has a blue one, but on their back, this is the randoseru. The randoseru is such a defining feature for elementary school students in Japan, because every elementary school student has to have this specific book bag. It will hold any books that they need. Actually, one of the best features about it, and you kind of can't see it on these kids, unfortunately, is that you can put a cloth over the back of it that has like a symbol on it, kind of like a triangle. It'll have a kid symbol in it, and this is usually a very bright highlight yellow. And this is used when the students walk home from school by themselves to alert cars or bikes or whatever from, be careful, there's a child here walking home from school. Yes, I'm pretty sure some of you may already know this, but a lot of elementary school students they do walk home from school. Japan is safe enough to where an elementary school student can walk home from school. Now, a lot of them do walk home in groups, but I have seen like individual, like one, maybe 5-6-year-old girl walking home from school by herself. It's still so incredible. I've been in Japan for 4 years and I still can't believe I live in a country that that's possible for kids to do. But this is like one of the reasons why the randaseru is so important, because you can put the little highlighted color cloth on there to warn people that like, this is a kid, be careful when you're driving and stuff like that, because they do cross roads by themselves. In fact, first year elementary school students, so like first graders, actually will take a class about street safety when walking home. So there's, in elementary school playgrounds, some of them will have almost like driver's ed looking courses, but they're for walking, and they're actually trained on like how to look both ways before crossing the street, pushing the walkway button before going across the walkway and stuff like that. I think that's really interesting. And they'll also take the elementary school kids, and for the first few weeks of school, they will have a teacher or a volunteer walk them to their house if they don't know how to get there, but eventually the kids do learn how to walk home by themselves. At an elementary school I taught at, this was very, very common. Most of the first graders did walk home by themselves. They learned how to do it, and because right next to school, tons of houses, so very easy to walk home. Most of the kids for sure. And then the Gakudo boshi. This is the yellow hat. You've probably also seen this, seen young characters in anime wear this too. The Gakudo boshi basically does the same thing. It's basically just like a visual, a visual symbol that's like, okay, careful, there's like a young kid here, like slow down in your cars, if you're biking or whatever, or if, hey, maybe the kid's in trouble, maybe the kid's lost, doesn't know where to go. This just kind of symbolizes that they're young and they might need help. Now, you might think like, oh, well, what about safety? The kids, especially kids this young, will have little buzzers on their randoseru backpacks, and you just push it and it goes wee, 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 like this really loud alarm. So if a stranger talks to the student, it makes them feel uncomfortable, or if they're about to get hurt or taken or something, which is really rare in Japan, but nonetheless, if it does happen, they're trained to push this button so that the alarm goes off, and then usually they're walking in a very public area, and so that they can get help that way if someone is doing something bad to them. These little things would go off all the time on accident at school, because they'll just like run into each other or push them on accident. So I heard them all the time. They are very loud. But yeah, it's just another safe way for students to be able to get home. So these are kind of what you need as an elementary school student to stay safe in Japan. All right, so the next thing, junior high school dress code. This is a lot more simple. You've probably seen like they have them in Tokyo Revengers too. Like a lot of these I think Yusuke wears one as well in Yu Yu Hakusho. A lot of like delinquent. This is like the delinquent school look, right? Are these black blazer kind of vests that have the buttons. These are very popular for junior high school, but this is basically when junior high school students would get their official uniforms. Now when I taught in a junior high school, they usually had to show up to school in their school uniforms, but then they were allowed to change into their PE uniforms, which is usually just like a white t-shirt and like red shorts. And everyone has to match, basically. Like Japan is very into everyone needs to look the same, and that goes for the junior high schools and the high schools too. You're not really allowed to wear makeup or even have nail polish or anything like that if you're a girl, or if you're a guy, you're not supposed to, honestly, same thing. You're not supposed to paint your nails or dye your hair blonde or anything like that. I think guys have to have their hair cut short as well. Girls usually do have to show up with their hair in a ponytail and out of their face. So there is a very, very strict dress code. It's not like when I was in school, I could have hair dye in my hair, and I could have my hair styled however I wanted, and I could show up in band t-shirts and anime t-shirts, that was fine, or even paint my nails and have makeup and stuff. But yeah, in Japanese schools, very simple. You just basically show up. These girls have their hair down, which is very rare. Usually your hair has to be, in every school that I've taught, they've wanted the female students to put their long hair up and out of their face. So I don't know, maybe it's not the regular rules at every school. I know at my husband's school they have to do that, as well. But, the high school dress code, the blazers are very, popular. I think the blazers are more what high schoolers have to wear in Japan. But you will see the seifuku every now and again. Now, I am going to go here just for a second. We all know that in anime, unfortunately, the school uniform gets really sexualized, and it's a little annoying. Not a deal breaker for a lot of anime, but as you probably tell with these actual pictures of Japanese high school students, they're very, very conservative. They're long. Now, you've probably seen an anime where the girls will try to, like, hike up their skirts and stuff. That absolutely does happen here, where the girls will try to, like, I did it when I was a high schooler, where it was, like, my skirt was really long, but I wanted it to be shorter, So, they're teenage girls, so they will do that. So if you've seen that anime, that actually does happen. And so the teachers are always getting on the girls for, like, hiking their skirts. I was like, no, your skirt is supposed to be to your knees, like, to your knees or past your knees. These uniforms are actually really conservative, despite the fact that in anime, you'll see, like, them being really short. It's not like that at all, unless the girl has it hiked up, which she shouldn't be doing that. Usually the adults get on them, which is good, because they're children and they need to be protected, right? But yeah, so these are the school uniforms. I think school uniforms are such a good idea. You don't have to think too hard about what you're wearing the next day to school. I'm kind of jealous, actually. This is where I want to kind of mention Akebi Sailor Uniform, which is an anime that aired earlier this year that I absolutely adore with all my heart. So this is about, at the very beginning of the show, you have Akebi, and she is about to graduate from elementary school and go into middle school for the first time. And she's very, very excited to join the school, because the school is known for having seifukus, sailor uniforms. And so she actually, her mother had gone to the same school that she's about to attend back when her mother was a middle school student. And so she gets her mother to make her sailor uniform to match the school's regulations. Well, when she shows up for, what do we call it? Like, not registration, but going to school for the first time. When she goes there for the first time, no one's wearing the sailor uniform, and everyone's wearing, like, the regular blazers, like the more modern blazers with the bow. And she's like, uh-oh, like, I'm the only one in a sailor uniform. That's not gonna go well. Well, Akebi actually gets permission to wear the sailor uniform, because it was the standard back in, like, the 80s or 90s, whenever her mother was in this middle school. So I think it's just the cutest show. The character Akebi does get to continue going to school in her sailor uniform. She's the only one that shows up in the sailor uniform, which is cool, because you would think most Japanese people wouldn't want to stand out, but I think the younger generation, they're more okay with standing out compared to older people in Japanese society. But this is such and I'll keep bragging on Akebi sailor uniform for being as realistic as it is. There's just so many times in this anime where I'm like, hey, this room looks exactly like the room that I taught in back when I taught middle school. So write that down now. Akebi sailor uniform. Akebi-chan no seirafuku. Did you write it down? Good. I love this show. It's really, really cute. It's very cute. Really good animation. Okay. So let's talk about everyday student life. So students do usually walk or take the train to get to schools, usually in the bigger cities. So, you know, Tokyo, Osaka, Sendai, the bigger ones. They'll just walk or take the train. But I live in like kind of a suburban area, but there are kids who probably commute over an hour, like take the train for an hour to come here and then walk to school or take the bus to school. So commutes can get really, really long, even in more suburban areas. But in like super rural areas, I used to live in Miyagi Prefecture, Japan, in a very rural city, or a rural town. And students would more often, instead of walking to school, if you did walk to school, they would ride their bikes or have family drop them off by car. As far as I know, I think elementary school students are not allowed to ride their bikes to school, but middle school students can. However, they have to wear a helmet. You'll always see middle school student. You'll know it's a middle school student in Japan if they're wearing a helmet. High schoolers don't have to wear a helmet when they ride their bikes, but middle schoolers do. I don't know why that rule is the way it is, but it is just something that I noticed. So, yeah, Japan is safe enough for the students to go to school by themselves half the time, which is, like, still mind-blowing to me. So let's talk about more about their everyday life. So classes usually do start around 8:30 in the morning, 6 to 7 periods, depending on the school. You have your morning break, which is usually between second and third period. It's like a 15-minute break where you can get a snack, heck, get a nap in if you want to. That's what I had to do as a teacher half of the time, get my morning nap in. And then lunch break. We'll get super into the Japanese school lunches. We have this picture here of an actual Japanese school and them eating their lunch. And then after academics are done, at the end of the day is cleaning time and after school clubs. So we'll get into all of these. So let's start with lunch. School lunches, it's such a cool experience to eat a Japanese school lunch. So I only had school lunch at elementary and junior high schools. And in my experience, it's been the same meal for everyone. So in high school, I believe students will bring their lunch more often. At my husband's school, that is the case. But in the elementary school and the junior high school that I taught in, we had a building in our town that was specifically for cooking school lunches, and they would make the school lunches and they would all put them in like the metal tins and then put them in a truck and then deliver them to the schools in the area, and then they'd unload the truck, and then the actual there's like lunch staff at each school that will open up the bins of food and then make the plates for the teachers. Now in the individual students' classrooms, these bins of food are brought into the classrooms. And in elementary and junior high school, there are volunteers in each class that actually serve the food to the other students. I might have a picture here. Okay, ignore all that. I don't have a picture. But they'll set up tables at the front of the classroom, and they'll have like 3 or 4 volunteers, and then the rest of the students will line up with their trays and grab a plate, and then the student behind the table will serve them the food. And they will go back and sit down in their own classrooms. So instead of having a cafeteria like you might be used to in Western schools, elementary and junior high schools, they normally eat in their classrooms. So you can see, even though I think Lucky Star takes place in high school, this is a really good example of eating in the classroom instead of the cafeteria. Now, in high school, you will more so see people eating in cafeterias. Now, when I worked at the elementary school and junior high school, we did not have cafeterias, but most of my husband's high schools have had cafeterias. The high schoolers have a little bit more freedom on whether they want to like eat in their classroom or eat in the cafeteria. I don't know how true it is that in a lot of anime, they'll go on the rooftop of the school and eat lunch. I have to ask my husband about that. I'm not sure how true that. Now, I know my husband does go on the rooftop of his school quite often. So it is a thing. It is a thing going up on the roof. But as far as students eating lunch there, I'm not so sure. But this is more the case when I taught at the schools. Usually you would take 4 desks and people would push them together, and yeah, you would just eat all the same things all together. And the school lunches were so good. This is actually a pretty good example of what a school lunch would be like. You would always get like a main dish. So in this case, curry and rice. You would get a side dish. It could be vegetables. It could be a salad. And then you would always get like a carb, so in this case rice, but like sometimes it would be bread. You could get bread and curry instead, or fish and rice, or bread and rice. And then it was always milk. You got milk, at least at my school, I got milk every single time. Something about milk is what they offer. So I hope if you ever want to teach in a Japanese school, you like milk, because you'll be getting a lot of it. I learned to like it. I'm actually not that big of a milk person, but I learned to actually look forward to having milk with my lunch. One of the things that Americans don't like, though, when they go, and I'm not trying to like just point out Americans, but like their food is not so much, right? Like we Americans are used to big portion sizes and eating so much. In Japan, the portion sizes are a lot smaller, and that's so true for school lunches. So I would say that if you're like a bigger guy maybe, or you like work out a lot, maybe bring some extra protein bars or something, because I thought the lunch was totally fine, but I know a lot of dudes who like did not think it was enough, because you are eating the same exact thing as a Japanese elementary school or junior high school student, so keep that in mind. But man, I loved the school lunches. I always looked forward to them. I thought they were good every time. And also, you definitely want to make sure that you eat the school lunches. In fact, if you're familiar with natto, Japanese natto, which is fermented soybeans, and they're kind of like the slimy thing. You've probably seen it before. I'm not a fan. Yeah, I'm one of those totally original foreigners that hates natto, and I would get natto sometimes with the school lunch, and I actually would give it to the PE teacher that sat next to me because he loved that stuff. But one time I gave it to him, and one of the other teachers chewed me out for not eating my natto, like in front of the other teachers. Like she literally yelled at me for not eating my natto, and it was so embarrassing. And I think like I'm telling you, she must have had something up her butt that day, because she was not being very nice about it, but it's okay. I ended up just like, after that happened, me and the PE teacher, we had this pact that I would always give him the natto if I didn't eat it. So do be careful about that. If you do have some like kind of old-fashioned people in your teacher's office and you don't eat your whole lunch, they might yell at you. That could happen. All right, so let's talk about after-school clubs. So students are expected to join a club after school, and you see this in anime a lot. A lot of anime are and we'll get into this too, are only about after-school clubs. So these clubs can include sports, fine arts, music, education, more. This is an archery club. I think they have like several anime about after-school archery clubs as well. In fact, I used to tutor a young 12-year-old girl in English who was part of an archery club as well. Unfortunately, at my schools that I went to, we didn't have an archery club, so I'm not sure exactly how rare archery clubs are, but they seem fairly common despite my own schools not having them. But I love these extracurricular things because, unfortunately, at my own school growing up, you could pick band, chorus, or a sport. So I love that you can join like the drawing club, the art club, or something like that, or different kinds of music clubs, or the English club if you're into more educational clubs. We've seen anime where they make anime and manga clubs as well. So I just love the variety that after-school clubs offer. And as I said, yeah, many anime are completely themed off of after-school clubs. We have anime gatarisu. I don't know is it just anime guitarist in English? I don't remember, but anime guitarist, so you can write that down. This is an anime about an after-school club about anime. So kind of like, you got your Genshiken kind of vibes in there, but this is a newer show that only came out a couple years ago. Keep Your Hands Off Eizouken. In the middle here, this is this is like way wacky fantasy almost kind of elements in Eizouken, but it is a realistic take on trying to get an after-school club approved in Japan at a school that's like really strict on what after-school clubs they allow. And then we have Diary of Her Days at the Breakwater, this one at the end with the girl fishing, which is about a fishing club. It had a really rural Japanese school in a fishing town. So you have all these anime that are just completely about after-school anime clubs, and I think it really represents how important after-school clubs are to students. Like, students really do make their entire personality, like they put their entire being into these after-school clubs, which is why you see in anime characters talking about how important after-school clubs are, and what club are you going to join. Like, when you meet someone in Japanese school for the first time, you're always like, oh, what club are you in? Like, it's so important, and normally everyone is part of a club. However, there are kids who don't go to clubs at all. And I didn't really realize how common this was until I was tutoring another Japanese middle school girl in English, and I asked her in our first meeting what club she was a part of, and she said she was part of the Kitakubu club. And I'm like, what is that? Like, what is that? What are you talking about? And she's like, I think in English it's the Going Home Club. And I had seen an anime called Kitakubu Katsudou Kiroku, which is the Chronicles of the Going Home Club. And I'm like, oh wait, is that like an actual club? Like, where you just go in a club room and just kind of do nothing? Is that what? And she's like, no, like, we actually call it the Going Home Club. Like, I'm actually in the Going Home Club, but it's not an actual club. We just go home. And honestly, when I first watched Kitakubu Katsudou Kiroku, I just thought it was being silly, like a silly little, this is the Going Home Club. But apparently, in Japanese schools, you can say you're part of the Going Home Club and you just go home and don't do a club. Now, I don't know how good this looks on like transcripts, or if you're trying to get into a really good high school, or heck, even a good college, if you don't join a club. But it's usually pretty looked down upon if you don't join a club. So yeah, most people definitely recommend joining one. But there's just so many anime about school clubs and elements of it. Like, I remember Clannad, it's the drama club, right? That's such a big part of the entire show. So we're also going to talk about cleaning time. Cleaning time, very, very important. Japanese students do clean their own classrooms. So at the very end of the day, at the very last period, usually what happens is students will get up and pick up their chair and put it on their desk, pick up the desk and the chair together. This is true in elementary school, basically all schools. Like, this is the thing they do. As soon as that bell rings, as soon as you're done with class, you pick up your chair, pick up your desk, and you move it to the back of the classroom, because then all of them get moved to the back of the classroom, and this gives the space for the students who are assigned sweeping the floors to do their job. So yeah, usually students have, like, for the week, you might be assigned sweeping the floors. You might be assigned washing the blackboards. You might be assigned washing the windows. You might be assigned actually cleaning the bathrooms or cleaning the hallways. Now, in my middle school that I worked at, we only had like one janitor. Like, I put janitor in quotation marks because most of his time was spent doing outside things, like mowing the grass outside, taking care of shrubbery outside, taking care of like the outside of the building. He didn't really have to do that much inside the building because the students took care of that. Now, that's something we definitely don't do in the West. We don't really take very good care of our own classrooms. We just kind of go home, right? And let the multiple janitors that the school has take care of it, which like seems really sad now that I think about it. But and this is an every single day thing. Now, some elementary schools will do it after lunch, and then but then some junior high schools will just do it after the end of the day. So before a club, it's cleaning time, and they'll play music over the speakers, and it's actually a really fun time. The students usually have a really good time cleaning the at least at my middle school. Let me tell you, I brag a lot on the middle school I worked at, but they were absolute angels. Like, I've worked at elementary schools where they're little demons, but I got really lucky with the middle school I worked at. Like, I don't think I ever had to scold any of the kids. I don't even think any of them did anything wrong ever. They were just little angels. And so, cleaning time, no one ever complained about it. It was actually like a really, really fun part of the end of the day. So let's talk about academics, the not fun part about being a Japanese student. So math, science, social studies, Japanese, and English, these are your core subjects. You've probably also seen in anime how, like, oh, it's English class, like, can you stand up and read that paragraph? And then the character will read in, like, really bad English. Like, that's exactly how it is in Japanese schools. So, and high school, in some cases, is even more rigorous than college. Like, high school is kind of the real test. And getting into the high school you want is also very difficult, which is why you're encouraged in middle school to really keep up with your studies, to join a club so that you can get into the high school of your choice. And people will move to, like, bigger cities, like, fully move to bigger cities so that their child or they themselves can get the best education possible. And it is rigorous. There is a lot of homework, a lot of expectations set on students, tests all the time, exams all the time. Like, I remember when I was in middle school and high school, we would have final exams usually, or maybe like an end of the semester exam, maybe like 2 major exams a year. But I feel like there's like 5 exams throughout the year in Japanese schools. So it is really rigorous, and parents do expect a lot from Japanese students. So, while there are fun parts about Japanese school, maybe like the clubs and stuff and the sports, and maybe anime makes it seem a little bit more fun than it really is, it actually is very, very rigorous. And as you might already know about Japan, like, contributing to society and making something of yourself is really important. And so this is seen in the anime Real Life, where the main character, he's originally 27 years old, and he gets a chance to, because he's kind of a hikikomori, and he's quit his grown-up job 3 months in, and then started working at a convenience store, and has to get money from his parents. He's basically not contributing to society at all. He gets the chance to, like, take a pill and makes himself look younger, and then go back to high school, because if he can make something of himself in high school, if he can start in high school and work on building himself up, then as an adult, maybe he won't be as much of a failure, is basically how the show goes. And, like, that's kind of true in Japanese society, is, like, it does start in high school. Like, a lot of these kids are pressured to start thinking about what they want to do as careers, because then they can pick up extracurricular activities or club activities related to the job that they want. And during this time, they're thinking about going to college and stuff. And so it all really starts in high school. So there is a lot of pressure. But going back to fun things, we'll talk about school trips for a little bit. So there is one place in Japan that is just, like, notoriously famous for school trips. Everyone goes here on school trips. And can you guess what the place is? I'll let you guys think. Really famous. Now, I'll go ahead and say it's not Tokyo. Tokyo is not honestly that famous of a place to do your school trips. I think because it's already so busy, and, like, most people, a lot of people live in the Kanto region of Japan where Tokyo is, so they have, like, the chance to already, like, go to Tokyo. But man, there is one major place in Japan that is super famous for school trips, and you've definitely read about it in manga, and you've definitely seen it in anime. And that place is Kyoto, Japan. Yes, the old ancient capital of Japan. This is the most popular stop. You've definitely seen it in anime, but like, there will be manga chapters or like whole manga arcs and arcs in anime where it's about the school trip to Kyoto. We saw it in K-On!, we saw it in Quintessential Quintuplets. I recently rewatched Tsuki ga Kirei, where they go on their school trip to Kyoto, and it's so true. Like, when I was in Kyoto last, which was last November, so many school groups there, as you know, the borders for Japan are closed, and they were definitely closed last year to tourism. So really the only people that were in Kyoto were school students. In fact, my husband's school was supposed to go to Kyoto, but they were a little bit worried about coronavirus reasons. So instead of going to Kyoto, they went up north to Tohoku instead, and like Sendai and stuff. But the plan was Kyoto. Just so many school reps go here. Now, I think if you're a student in Kyoto, you probably don't want to go to Kyoto like your own hometown for a school trip. So those kids probably do go probably like to Hiroshima or Fukuoka, or like probably even Tokyo. But yeah, both of these, we've got like the Golden Lake Pavilion, or the castle in Keion right there, and then for quintessential quintuplets, Fushimi Inari in Kyoto. So yeah, you know some crazy crap's about to go down when you're reading a romance manga and a romance school manga, and there's about to be a school trip to Kyoto. Like, there are gonna be confessions or some crazy drama during that school trip. So there's another question I'm gonna ask the chat. So chat, can you remember an anime that has like major things that happen on the Kyoto school trip? Because it does happen quite a bit in anime, so let me know in the chat. All right, so we'll talk a little bit also about teachers' life. So teachers have incredibly long work hours for not so good pay, especially now because the yen is very weak to the US dollar now. I know that a lot of currencies right now are weak to the US dollar, but because I only pay for things in US dollar or yen, that's kind of what I relate it to. So teachers, if you come here as an ALT, which is an assistant language teacher, a lot of companies will only pay you about 2.5 million yen a year, which, if you were to convert that to US dollars now, it would be very sad, because right now, as I'm recording this video in the middle of September, it's like 100 yen to 69 US cents. So it's really bad right now. But if it was normal, 2.5 million yen is really only about like $20,000 a year. Now, to be fair, I think that living in Japan is cheaper than living in the United States. Like, the cost of living for like an apartment, like my apartment, is only like 500 US dollars a month for a 2-bedroom. That's insane. And like, I don't have to pay for a car, for example. So I just pay 500 yen. So like $5 every like 3 or 4 months to get my bike maintained, like my bicycle maintained, and that's it. So there are a lot of things that I don't have to pay for that I would have to pay for in the United States. Don't even get me started on medical costs, by the way. So the cost of living is cheaper in Japan, so you can make $20,000 or 2.5 million yen a year work. But I would say that if you make like way more money in America, you do want to consider like, if you do want to live in Japan, but you're gonna like go into one of these companies that's super easy to get into, like to get your foot in the door and get you a work visa, like you're not going to get paid a whole lot. So even if you're directly hired through a school, you're not hired through like a third party English language company that hires you and then places you in a school, and the school pays the company and the company pays you. If you don't go that route, you're still really only getting paid maybe 4 to 5 million yen, which is still like not great. So, yeah, just keep in mind, like, teachers do not get paid very well, and they're expected to work a lot of hours. My husband works about 45 to 50 hours a week, which is why it's good that I get to stay home and, like, help him around the house and do things here that he would struggle to being able to do, because his job is so demanding of him. And so, yeah, it is true that teachers do sometimes stay in the teacher's office until 11 p.m. at night. My husband has definitely had to do that. He's been there during exam week or something. He's been at work until, from 8 a.m. to 9 p.m. So it does happen. So it is grueling work. And this picture right here is like the perfect picture of the setup of a teacher's room. Now, doesn't it look like chaos? But it's somewhat organized in a way. Well, that teacher's desk in the middle, in the very middle in the back, I sat next to that teacher before, which was actually the head English teacher. You will have, there aren't any, like, real rules of keeping your desk, I wouldn't say, like, everything is clean. That's not what I'm trying to say, but everything is disorganized. I would say that much about teachers' rooms and Japanese schools in general. They're very, just everything is chaos, just like this picture. Like, this is such a perfect example of what Japanese schools are like. And yeah, I did sit next to an teacher who would have like piles and piles of books like all over his desk, and like I don't know how that guy worked at his desk, but he was never told to clean it up or anything. Like, that's just life. That's just Japanese schools. And club rooms are like that too. Old club rooms and extracurricular rooms, that they are not like dirty or anything. Like, they're clean because they've been cleaned, but there's a lot of clutter. Clutter is the word I'm looking for. Like, lots of boxes and just random stuff everywhere. That's how Japanese schools are. Which is a perfect segue into talking about sound euphonium, because I think sound euphonium, and it could just be Kyoto Animation is so good at what they do. Sound euphonium, I remember my friend talking about sound euphonium before he'd seen it. And he had said something like, sound euphonium is such a good example of like what Japanese schools actually look like inside. Like, the backgrounds in the school are like really reflect actual Japanese schools. So like, you can even see in this one picture where Kumiko is like looking at the door. You like get the boxes to the side and like all of the stuff on the shelf and stuff. Like, that's the one weird thing about Japanese schools. There's boxes everywhere for whatever reason, and maybe you've seen it in anime too. And I think in like Western schools, you just wouldn't see boxes like just everywhere all the time, never being put up. Like, they would probably go put them in a closet somewhere. But yeah, that's the thing about schools in Japan, is that there's like a lot of clutter. And I think, yeah, sound euphonium does a really good job if you like look in the backgrounds and stuff. Just represents Japanese schools so well. Sound euphonium also actually takes place in Kyoto, by the way. So I actually highly recommend this show. This is, I was about to say it's an all-girls school, but that's actually not true. There are guys. It's just mostly, I think it focuses a lot on the girls. That makes me think it's an all-girls show, but there's definitely guys in it too. So anyway, that's all I have for the panel. I really had to get through like so much information. There's so many more details that I could go into if I had more time. But yeah, that's the panel right there. I hope if you have any questions, like, please feel free to drop them in the chat. And I'll try to answer them as quickly as possible. I hope you enjoyed this panel. I hope you learned a little bit more. And yeah, go watch Akebi Sailor Uniform. I think the second episode of that specifically, I think it's the second episode where they're serving the food to each other. I like haven't seen that in anime in so long, and I thought it was like such a perfect representation of what would happen in my own middle schools. So it does get that right. So the short answer is like yeah, a lot of anime does get stuff right, and some anime just goes way too far with it. So I hope you guys enjoyed the panel. And I hope you guys enjoy the rest of Uncon. Thank you so much for watching. Bye!